You're listening to Paris: A State of Mind on Paris Underground Radio. For more great content, join us on Patreon at patreon.com/Paris Underground Radio.
Welcome to Paris: A State of Mind. Join us as we talk about the good, the bad, the ins, the outs of property rentals and purchases in and around Paris. We'll have topics for renters, owners, and visitors, share questions we are regularly asked, and more. My name is Gail Boisclair of Perfectly Paris, and my co-host is Marie Pistinier of Lokim Paris. Be a part of it. Both of us are proud members of the SPLM, the first representative body of furnished rental professionals. Hello, everyone in our Paris: A State of Mind podcast world. I hope everyone's having a good start to their week, since our podcasts always air on a Monday. We are continuing along with our series interviewing people about living in their arrondissement, hoping that you're all learning a lot more about different areas of Paris and whether or not you might like to live there, visit there, and so on. So today I have my lovely friend on with me. Her name is Cliodhna Fullam, and she's originally from Ireland. So you can imagine that even though her name sounds easy to say, you don't want to know how to spell it. But we call her Cleo for short, or Cleo. So welcome, Cleo.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. And so, Cliodhna, what arrondissement do you currently live in?
So I live in the 18th arrondissement. Better known, I suppose a lot of people just call it Montmartre, but it's much bigger than that. And my local metro station would be Château Rouge, just to give you an idea of which side I'm on. So the historic district of Montmartre is demarcated by several streets, and the street that I live on, Rue de Clignancourt, is one of those streets. So we're right in the heart of the 18th, actually.
Yeah, it's true. I can vouch for that.
Yes.
And Château Rouge, it's true. A lot of people don't really necessarily know about that area. So this should be very interesting. And how long have you lived there?
So we've been in this apartment just short of 7 years now. But before that, we lived literally on the border of the 18th arrondissement in the 17th arrondissement in Batignolles, close to Place de Clichy. So we did spend a lot of time in the 18th even before we lived here. So we knew it pretty well. When we wanted to move to get some more space, and the 18th was an obvious choice for us at that point to investigate.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, of course, you've got so many friends in the 18th as well, too. That helps.
We had lots of friends living here before and now, and people who've moved into the area since we've moved in as well. So it's great. Yeah.
So was it that you were particularly choosing to look for something in the 18th, or was it just a matter of what you found that seemed to suit you and where you wanted to be, et cetera?
Well, we really loved living in the Batignolles area in the 17th, 18th. However, we wanted some more space, and we particularly wanted a terrace. We had been lucky enough to live abroad for a couple of years and had gotten used to having some outside space. So when we came back to Paris, we found ourselves quite limited without any terrace. So that was our main criteria. And we continued to look in the 17th and the 18th arrondissements and the 9th. But the 18th has a lot of character to it. So it was kind of our preference, to be honest. All of these arrondissements are very big, so we were really in the 18th, we were limiting ourselves to from where we are back over towards where we used to live, to be honest. And we like the vibe here. Where we live is often known as the lost tourist side of Montmartre because there are a couple of main access points into Montmartre by metro. One of those is the line 2 at Anvers, which when you get out of the metro, it's like looking straight up the hill at the Basilica, Montmartre. One of those would be Abbesse, which is in the heart of Old Montmartre, just kind of at the bottom. Again, no matter where you are here, you have to go uphill. And then another is Château Rouge, which is our local metro station. And you walk uphill from Château Rouge to where we live. And we're about halfway up in terms of the ascent to the peak of the hill.
So what did you feel like when you first moved into the area? What did you think in terms of living in that neighborhood?
We were really happy with our choice. Château Rouge has had people assume that Château Rouge isn't very safe. I really like where we live because it's a real melting pot. Like it really, really is. We live just beside a junction of streets. And if you walk out our front door and walk straight up the hill, you're in a really bucolic little place it's very famous. A lot of, it's Instagram heaven at the moment. There are beautiful little cafes and restaurants with colored chairs and lights strung in the evening, and it's really pretty. And you're at one of the entrances to the Montmartre Park is there. If you kind of veer slightly to the right, you're on Rue Ramée, which is Village Ramée, which is very trendy, and there are new restaurants and bars opening literally every day of the
All
week.
the time.
Oh my goodness.
I can't keep track of it.
Another one opened on Tuesday. I mean, it's just,
Oh my.
yeah, a Greek restaurant.
Wow.
So, and then if you hang a left from Rue Ramée, you're on Coulancourt, which is pretty posh, If you hang a right from our front door, you're in West Africa. If you hang a left, you're in North Africa. And if you go back to Château Rouge and Boulevard Barbès, you're in the historic Goutte d'Or area, which is really very, very mixed area with great markets. And it's really buzzy. And you wouldn't think you were in Paris at all. And at some, in some places around there, it's very, very mixed. And we love that because you can find absolutely everything that you need within a stone's throw. So it's great.
Yeah, that area is now, they're calling it more kind of like Little Africa.
Yes, exactly.
With all the shops and things. It's actually become very trendy. So, for people that have hesitated, maybe thinking, I don't know if I want to go be by Château Rouge, it's really become extremely trendy.
It really has. And a lot of, because the buildings like Boulevard Barbès, the buildings are really stunning in the area. And, it's evolving all the time. It's changing and for the better, but it's never going to lose its heart. It's as you said, Little Africa, it's wonderful. I love the buzz of it. And when visitors come, they're always really enchanted by a side of Paris they didn't really expect to see, actually. A lot of people just don't know it exists at all. So they enjoy that.
So to date a little bit the podcast, everyone thinks it's like Emily in Paris sometimes when they come here.
Not where I live.
It's not. What is it that you really love most about your area, apart from being like a melting pot of cultures and things?
You could say this about any part of Paris, really, because, we've both lived here for a long time. So Paris is really a series of villages. And, our village is Village Ramée. And we know our local, butcher, baker, candlestick maker, not quite, but, our local wine caviste, our cheesemonger, our butcher, our baker, and people know one another. And it's a really nice sense of community. A lot of people in the 18th have lived in the 18th for generations. And they never leave the 18th. People in the 18th seem to be particularly proud of living here and knowing it. And I suppose because the history of the area and Montmartre and the charm of Montmartre, which was kind of avoided by Haussmann when he broadened the boulevards and navigated Paris and made it so famous for what it is today in terms of its beautiful buildings and stuff. Montmartre stayed so charming with cobble streets and winding streets. And so we really like that. Where we live, we're also right beside the fabric market, Marché Saint-Pierre, which again is really charming. And even if you don't know how to sew, it's nice.
Oh, it's amazing.
It's an amazing place to go and explore the fabric markets and all the buttons and the wool and the thread. And all the different patterns and things you can do and how they're cutting the fabric. Even as I said, if you don't know how to sew, it's just such an interesting area, and all these shops that have been here forever and ever and ever. So it's one of the biggest fabric markets in the world, apparently. So just this series of shops.
Well, and it's certainly the best one in Paris, the whole Marché Saint-Pierre area for fabrics.
Everyone comes from near and far to Marché Saint-Pierre.
And so, we talked a little bit about the vibe. And if you were saying this is a certain type of area for some type of people, would you say it's more couples, families, swinging singles? What do you think?
I would say, it is changing. It has changed since we moved in. Again, this is a little bit the property in Boulevard Barbès area and so on. And the Goutte d'Or has become more trendy. The area's become more trendy, as you said, and property has been on sale. And young couples are moving in. So we're seeing a lot more young couples with kids. And young couples, it's pretty cheap around here. There's a great happy hour trade. So we see a lot of students come in for the happy hour trade. And then they seem to be staying and frequenting the sort of more trendy bars and restaurants that are on the higher scale in terms of prices and so on. But it's really very vibrant. So I would say students come really just for the happy hour trade, but then younger couples, it's I feel it's getting younger than when we moved in. So, but as I say, it's evolving. So let's see. But I think that, there are a lot of renovations going on. So I think that trend will continue. There'll be more property.
I think that one of the things that I have always noticed since I've lived in Paris, that there's so many, as you said, gorgeous buildings along Barbès and in that area, but they're bigger spaces, they're larger apartments. And I think that they're at a more affordable price for, say, a young couple, maybe moving, getting their first apartment and looking to potentially having a family. So needing something that could be bigger.
I agree with you completely. Yeah. And I think that's exactly hit the nail on the head. The 18th is a really big arrondissement. And if you look at the price per square meter around Château Rouge, just as a point versus Abbesse or Jules Geoffrin, even, it's very different.
It's all over the place. Yeah.
It's just all over the place. So.
Yeah. And then even where I am in the 18th, I'm between Lamarck and Guy Moquet, and then that's another story altogether.
Exactly.
The closer I get to Lamarck, the more expensive it is. The closer I get to Guy Moquet, the less expensive it is.
Exactly.
But that's changing too.
It is changing. Yeah, it's changing all the time. So that's interesting, because as I said, there are always places opening up, and we've got loads of really nice in terms of like bio and local shops, and we have a collective, a co-op as well, which is working really well, and we've some music venues that have opened up as well in the area, all in the Goutte d'Or. It's really beginning to buzz. We've got vegan restaurants and gluten-free things that you wouldn't have imagined 7 years ago when we moved in, but there they are all of a sudden.
Yeah, I know.
And a big change in the area is, your listeners won't know this, but for people who've lived in Paris for a long time, there was a shop called Tati.
Yes.
Which was a mainstay at Barbès. And Tati was this giant and cheap kind of department store. You go in for everything. You go in for one thing and you come out with bags of stuff. And everything was really affordable. And people traveled to Tati. And unfortunately, through some bad business decisions, I believe they have been liquidated. And so there will be the space, because it was like a shop that gave birth. There were many, many, many Tatis around for Tati marriage, Tati kids, Tati house. And so they're slowly but surely they're being filled up. But that will also change the area. Across the road from Tati, there was Brasserie Barbès, which is quite posh, and people thought this will never work. It's right beside the metro station. And
I was one of the first ones that thought it would never work.
It's doing a bomb now.
Yeah.
And there's a 4-star hotel right beside Tati on the same street. That was it's really an interesting area. It's got a bit of everything. And I love that about it,
If you're enjoying this episode of Paris, A State of Mind, you may also be interested in our sister podcast, Navigating the French. Join Emily and an expert guest who take a deep dive into a word that helps us better understand the French. And now back to Paris, A State of Mind. Is there something that you wish you knew about this particular area before you had moved here that maybe our listeners should know?
I think for me, there were two things. Where I lived before, I was very close to two very big parks, two of the biggest parks in Paris, Park Martin Luther King and Parc Monceau, and spent a great deal of time there and exercised in them. Now, there are lots of what we call squares, so smaller squares rather than parks in the 18th, many of them on hills and sides of hills. And we spend a lot of time in those green areas, but there isn't the same sort of large park like one of those or other parks like Les Buttes-Chaumont or whatever. There is a big park towards La Chapelle, so about a 15-minute walk from where I am, Parc d'Éole, which is lovely. But I'm not in sort of spitting distance of a park, which I had been in the past, so I do miss that sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing, and it's a good thing, it actually, moving here changed the way I live in Paris, because It's much better served by public transport than where I used to live. I used to live in the line 13. I'm sure people, if you're in your 17th arrondissement podcast, will talk about the horrors of the line 13. And now I live in the line 4. So I've got the 4, the line 12 and the line 2, all just, they're, more or less distant. And the line 4 crosses the city, and it will be automated by the end of 2023.
Yes.
So when there are strikes, those of us living in the line 4 will still be able to move around the city with ease, which will be really great. But the line 4 is a great line because it crosses every other line on the metro.
It does. I mean, at my old apartment, I was by the line 4 and the line 12. And it's true, it crosses everything. Now I'm the line 12 or your favorite line, the line 13.
Yes. Well, the line 4 gets nearly as crowded, but as the 13, it's number 2, I think, after the 13. But it just changed the way, because I suppose you go to places that are on your metro line. And so that meant that I was really happy to do that. So I hadn't realized that something as simple as your local metro station could actually change the way your behavior actually completely. But it did. So that was something I never imagined before moving here. And it's had quite an impact, actually. Yeah.
No, it's true. It's actually a good point, because oftentimes if I'm taking a metro somewhere, I'm thinking, oh, do I have to change lines?
Yeah.
I don't feel like changing lines. But you're right. That's the advantage with the 4 is it does hit pretty well. It goes right through the center of Paris.
It hits everyone. I have this obsession about looking when I'm on metros of what lines they cross.
Yeah, I do that too.
And the 4 crosses them all, except for like the 7 bis or something. But
yeah, which doesn't matter.
It's very isolated.
Sorry for anyone who likes the 7 bis.
Yes, exactly. Sorry about that. But yeah, no, it's okay. So you have to change the Châtelet. But, it's, but not even, that's the thing about the line 4. You can change, like you've loads of big stations like Strasbourg-Saint-Denis or Montparnasse, it really touches a lot of big stations and makes it very easy to get around. So it has cut my travel time down across the city considerably from where I lived before.
Definitely. And is there anything else that you'd like to add about your area?
Yeah, just with regard to, so we do kind of go up the hill quite a lot into Montmartre. And it's interesting that the street that comes from Château Rouge, Rue Poulet, is currently being pedestrianized. So it's going to be another axis. And I don't know if the city of Paris are hoping to push more people to access Montmartre from this side by cleaning up some of the streets in the area. It seems to be the case. Hopefully that'll take a little bit of the, hopefully that'll give a little bit more shine to Château Rouge metro station, because maybe it'll be mentioned more as an access point. I don't know, but we'll wait and see. So that's just a recent development.
That's good to know. Yeah.
Yeah.
It might, because it's true, there's a little bit too much pressure, I would say, on the Abbesse metro station, and lesser so on Lamarck, but still a little bit on Lamarck as well, too.
I agree. Yeah. And we're nearly as close. I mean, you when you come up from Château Rouge and you access, you are, as I said, literally halfway up in that lovely bucolic area. Okay, you've got 244 steps ahead of you, but that's going to be the same everywhere. So people who want to take the funicular, they'll probably continue to get off at the stop that's closest. But for people who would like to actually have the full experience of steps, Château Rouge would be a great option for them.
Definitely. And so I always have one final question that I ask everyone. It's the big one. If money were no object, if anything was possible and you could live wherever you wanted in Paris with it, whatever type of apartment you could have, where would it be and what type of apartment? Anywhere. You have your apartment fairy godmother that's just going to give you whatever you want.
Well, if the apartment fairy godmother could move the River Seine closer to Montmartre, that would be ideal, because during lockdown, I felt the distance from the Seine because I do like to see the water, and it was out of our magic kilometer radius. But honestly, I think I really love Montmartre. I don't think I would want to live anywhere else now. And I think I might have become one of those 18th people,
I've always been that way.
Yeah, I know. And
all my friends know getting Gail out of the 18th is like pulling teeth.
Yeah. And I think I might be with you on that one. And as I said, because we lived so close to it before, I've been here for 20 years, basically. So there's so many places. I've lived in the 15th before as well. And, I do miss the Seine. We're just a little bit far from the Seine, but on the line 4, it's like 20, not even 20 minutes. It's like 15 minutes. So to Ile de la Cité. So yeah, I think I'm an 18th girl like yourself, Gail. I think it'd be very hard to get me out of here now. And we are lucky that we have a really nice outdoor space with our apartment. That's why we chose it. So that'd be hard to compromise on now too for anywhere else. So
yeah, I do love your terrace. You do have a fabulous terrace.
We do have a fabulous terrace.
Well, thank you so much. It was really great having you on. And I think it's really good that people are going to hear a little bit of living in Château Rouge area that they probably had no idea what it was like. So thank you again.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you very much.
You too. Bye.
You too. Bye. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Paris, A State of Mind, featuring Gail of Perfectly Paris and Marie of Loquim, both who are founding members of the SPLM. Paris, A State of Mind is produced by Paris Underground Radio. The music, Jazz in Paris, is by Media Right Productions. For more information on this show and others, go to parisundergroundradio.com.
This episode of Paris, A State of Mind was produced by Jennifer Garrity for Paris Underground Radio. For more great content, join us on Patreon at patreon.com/Paris Underground Radio.